Hello everyone, today I'm going to present my paper with the title The Interference of Bahasa Melayu Sarawak in English Language Written Production. Before I start, let me introduce myself. My name is Jenny Lu and I am currently teaching in Sekolah Kebangsaan Miri in Miri, Sarawak. I am now doing my final year of Master's Program in Universiti Kebangsaan, Malaysia. Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect is commonly used by the local communities in Sarawak as a medium of communication. Sarawak is actually one of the states in Malaysia. It comprises of almost 25 different ethnic groups with a variety of ethnic languages. In order for them to understand as well as to interact with one another, they have applied the use of Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect in their daily routines. Due to its frequency of use, it creates a significant interference on the pupils' written production. This is evident from the pupils' achievement in UPSR. 73.6% of the pupils nationwide passed in the writing paper. However, there were no official documents that show the passing rates of the candidates in Sarawak, which raises the doubts on their proficiency in writing. Besides that, limited studies on Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect as well as its interference on the pupils' written production has caused insufficient information being obtained on how the dialect could interfere or would interfere with the pupils' written production. Hence, this study is essential to investigate as to what extent Bahasa Melayu Sarawak interferes with the pupils' written production, as well as to identify the possible errors in the pupils' written works due to the interference of the dialect. Various studies have been conducted by researchers all around the world, and they have pointed out that the interference of the learner's first language as well as their mother tongue is one of the major factors that affects their English language proficiency. Therefore, the purpose of this study is to identify the interference of Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect in the pupils' written production in English language. The research objective is to identify the interference of the dialect in the pupils' written production in English based on two aspects, which are grammatical and lexical aspects. A qualitative design in the form of a case study is employed in this research. A purposive sampling was conducted and 6 respondents were chosen from an urban school in Miri, Sarawak. The main reason why 6 respondents were chosen is to minimize the redundancy of data as well as to cut down on the length of time needed to conduct the research. Meanwhile, an urban school is chosen instead of a rural school is due to its average achievement despite it being in the heart of the city. This urban school selected also showed a great disparity between the good and the weak classes in their English language grades. Meanwhile, as mentioned previously, a purposive sampling was conducted to gather the respondents. There are 2 main criteria that need to be fulfilled, which are the participants must be of Bumiputra background that use Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect in their daily lives, and they have already mastered the basic skills in reading and writing in English language. This is in order to ensure that the respondents would be able to provide relevant findings with the objective of the research. This study only focuses on the errors identified in the pupils' written works due to the interference of Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect. This is in accordance with the purpose and the objective of the study. There are 2 instruments used in this study, which are document analysis as well as observation. In document analysis, pupils' written works were collected and analyzed based on a checklist that was derived from the linguistic taxonomy of error. The errors are recorded and categorized based on the categories of errors in the taxonomy. Meanwhile, for observation, data were collected through observing pupils inside the classroom as academic interaction and outside the classroom as social interaction with the use of a classroom language interaction checklist. The data are then being analyzed using language acquisition grid in the checklist. This is to determine the frequency of pupils' use of Bahasa Melayu Sarawak inside as well as outside the classroom. Now, let's look at the findings obtained from the document analysis as well as the observation. In the document analysis, 24 written compositions were collected and examined, and the findings show that there were several items in the grammatical aspects that the pupils made the most number of errors due to the interference of Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect. First and foremost, the use of definite and indefinite article. The participants showed errors in terms of placing the definite and indefinite articles in the sentences constructed in English. This is mainly due to the non-existence of the use of definite and indefinite article in Bahasa Melayu Sarawak. Participants were confused as to when to use the articles correctly in a sentence. Next, the use of preposition of time and place. The participants also showed the wrong use of preposition to indicate the time as well as to describe the position of a certain object as well as a subject. This is also due to the absence of specific preposition in Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect to indicate the time and position of an object or a subject. Next, the use of past tense and future continuous tense. Pupils are confused as to how and when to use the tenses correctly. The participants actually possess little knowledge of using the tenses correctly, and this is also because of the dialect that has no specific tenses that refer to any specific time frame. Next, the use of personal pronouns. Now, Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect only consists of certain personal pronouns such as kami as I, kami orang as we, kita as you, and sidak as they. And because of this very limited personal pronouns in the dialect, confusion arises when the participants wanted to use personal pronouns in the sentences being constructed in English. Last but not least, plural form. There are no form of plural and singular nouns in the dialect, and because of this, the participants are confused as to which form of nouns should be used to indicate the number of items. Meanwhile, in lexical aspect, the participants were seen to make the most number of errors in the choice of words. This is due to the participants' limited repertoire in English language, and this forced them to incorporate as well as to translate the words from Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect to English language. Thus, the participants are unable to convey the intended message clearly in their written works. This can be seen from the examples given in the table shown in the slide. For example, number 1. The participant actually wrote, "A lot of people say it is fun for diving people." This is because they were confused as to use the word diving people or divers. Most of the participants do not understand or do not know the existence of the word divers, and because of that, they direct translate from their dialect, which is dorang menyelam, into diving people, which is inaccurate and actually convey the wrong message to the readers. Meanwhile, in observation, 8 observation sessions have been carried out in 4 weeks, and the findings are as follow. Participants were found to generate simple sentences which were directly translated from Bahasa Melayu Sarawak when asked to describe a picture. The participants were also unable to complete simple unfinished sentences in English during class presentation. The participants also used the dialect fully in group discussion, and they were seen to be more comfortable in using Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect to initiate and maintain conversation inside the classroom as well as during their social interaction with their peers. Last but not least, the participants also encountered difficulties when asked to write short paragraphs in English. They were unable to understand the given words, and they resorted to using translation to complete the given writing task. Some of the participants were dependent on their teacher during the writing session in order to determine whether or not their sentences are written accurately or not. Therefore, from the findings, we can actually conclude that most of the errors made by the participants were due to 3 main factors, which are, firstly, the influence of the use of Bahasa Melayu Sarawak during the interaction inside and outside of the classroom. Secondly, the frequent use of translation from Bahasa Melayu Sarawak to English language. The participants' limited knowledge of the target language actually forces them to apply their knowledge of their first language or of the dialect to fill in their knowledge gaps, which resulted to translation, and thus errors were made in terms of syntax and grammar, as well as in lexical aspects, which can be seen from the findings in this study. Last but not least, the dissimilarities between the first and second language in terms of grammatical rules and concepts also contributed to the number of errors made by the participants. The dissimilarities between the dialect as well as English language has created confusion to the participants, and this also caused them a great difficulty to master the target language due to the absence of certain grammatical items or concepts in the dialect. The implication here is that young learners are facing challenges to master English language due to the interference of the dialect used in their daily interaction. This could affect their development in the language at a young age, which will eventually influence their level of proficiency in the long run. Next, lack of control by teachers in the classroom to minimize the learners' use of mother tongue as well as the dialect facilitated the first language interference in the language learning process. Hence, school as well as the classroom should serve as the best setting for English language learning process to happen. School administrators, teachers, as well as policymakers should sit down and discuss on the ways as well as on the intervention to strengthen English language proficiency by keeping in mind that the interference of Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect is also one of the major factors that affect the local Sarawakian pupils' proficiency level in English language. Hence, they have to draw up suitable intervention as well as programs to strengthen English language proficiency and to preserve as well as maintain the dialect as a part of their cultural identity. In conclusion, the results of the study indicated that there is an interference of Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect in the pupils' written production. The constant use of Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect in the classroom interactions as well as during their social interaction has also facilitated the interference of the dialect and became the major contributing factor towards the pupils' English language proficiency level. Hence, it is also very recommended that for future research, interference of Bahasa Melayu Sarawak dialect in spoken production, as well as the teacher's perspectives on the extent of the interference of the dialect in English learning process in the classroom can be looked upon in detail. That's all from me. Thank you for your attention.